Hello and salam, namaste. Peace be with you. My name's Malik, and you are watching Chai Chat and Community. Welcome to this episode where I, your host, get to speak about an issue that's very close to my heart, which is spirituality. And I know it's a very broad term, and spirituality means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. You may come from a particular religious background, or you may come from a mindfulness or new wave of spirituality. So I'm going to cover those issues, but I'm going to do it in a way which hopefully is beneficial to you. And the way that I'm going to do that today is talk about spirituality in our 9 to 5 world. We live in, or well, I live in a Western society, in a capitalistic 9 to 5 society. People are constantly working and constantly striving to make money and all these sort of things. And how do you be a spiritual person in this world? Are they contradictory? Can they balance it? So we're going to look at that. But before I start, I want to acknowledge the land that I come from and where I'm standing and speaking to you today, which is the Bunurong and Wurundjeri land. And I pay my acknowledgement to that always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So today's show is going to be in 2 parts. The first part is I'm going to hopefully talk about how spirituality today is practiced in the workplace and this idea of McMindfulness. And it was coined by an author that I really look up to called Ronald E Purser, and term McMindfulness, because mindfulness is becoming a very popular concept in the workplace. And what are the pros and cons of McMindfulness and mindfulness in general? So we're going to look at that, and then after I'm going to hopefully give you some tips about what you can do in this 9 to 5 world with a few tips of my own and wisdom that I've learned. From teachers and different mystics and books as well. So before we get into it, I also want to acknowledge that work is a very difficult thing. And for those of us who are working at the moment in this COVID time, it's a very big privilege to be able to work. A lot of people find it very difficult to find jobs. A lot of people work in certain careers for many different reasons. So when I come and talk about these issues, I also acknowledge that it's not as easy for other people and not as privileged for them. So just to have that little acknowledgement at the start. Hello to Safdar Ali, who's saying salam and brother, please help. Well, yes, we're here to help. So when it comes to your 9 to 5 world, people have said that, I work for many reasons. There's Maslow's hierarchy, and people work to, put food on the table, or it's something that gives them something to do. But a lot of people don't really think about fulfillment. And now this is starting to come in, especially with the younger generation, is that I want to work for fulfillment. I want to work for more meaning. But for people who are more religious, we want to work for more of a spiritual dimension as well. And spirituality is transcending, right? It's not just about working and then leaving everything aside. You're actually transcending the self. The problem with the mindfulness culture is that their soul and higher consciousness and God, or whatever religion you practice, and it's just looking at mindfulness as this is something you do and then go to work. So we're going to teach you breathing techniques. We're going to teach you how to work more efficiently, but that's all you need to do. You don't actually have to really apply that transcendent nature to aspects of life. Basically, they want you to just be calm and quiet, work better for the company. I think that's where the issue currently lies with mindfulness. And so, what is a better way of approaching that? And I feel like all spiritual traditions teach this is justice, equality, looking after people, ethics, and values. So, your spirituality in your workplace, are you looking out for the person who is lower than you in rank? How are you speaking to them? Are you speaking to them in a kinder way? Are you speaking to the same way that you speak to your boss? The same way that you speak to the cleaner, right? So the idea of spirituality is not that you're just doing it to become effective at work. No, it's a way of being and a way of understanding. So mindfulness currently in the capitalist society isn't really creating impact that it should. And what is a better way of doing that with mindfulness techniques is looking and being able to talk and have activism in political and social aspects. So a lot of these companies and organizations don't really want you to acknowledge that they might not be ethical, or what are they doing for the environment, or how much are they paying people overseas, or what are the conditions of their workplace, the gender pay gap. They don't want you to look at those issues. So as a spiritual person in this 9 to 5, as challenging as it could be, making sure that you're addressing those issues. And I understand that it can be difficult speaking up, but being part of a spiritual person is standing up to injustice. And that can happen in the workplace in many different forms. The other way of getting past this idea of McMindfulness is, how do you interact once you're outside of work? And again, some of these factors and issues are not you didn't create these issues. It's because of government policy, it's because of social issues, political issues. So, what is happening to you after you leave work? A really interesting example is, if you're living in Melbourne, you're traveling to work, the average person, I think it's like 40 to 50 minutes, maybe even an hour one way and an hour back. So there's a lot of time on the road, and that creates a lot of stress. Road infrastructure, if you're going for policies that are more conducive to providing work for different parts of the city rather than just being in central place, that alleviates a lot of stress because you're so far from work. So again, your spirituality in a way is devalued through the stress of just being in traffic, right? You know, a lot of people when they're driving and then they come back home and then they just don't want to do anything. So what we can do is, are we fighting for policies that actually help our mental health? You know, are we looking at economic condition of the country or the place that we live, or for other people who live in other parts of Melbourne? So all this stuff is linking back to that. And that's why I really wanted to bring up this topic, is because right now, the culture of going to the yoga, there's a lot of mindfulness places. Even your app will tell you, hey, you've been on the computer screen for too long, take a break. These things are good, but they're not holistic. They're not actually allowing for really big change. And so we don't want to become passive, or we don't want to become um, too quiet in our condition. It's great that we're learning how to breathe properly and how to speak and how to be more kinder at work. But that real political, social, economic change is really important for a spiritual person. And those things, I think, if you are able to do that, you will actually be providing a service and finding meaning in your work. And that's what a lot of people really want in life, is meaning, is purpose. And if you can do these, speaking up for the rights in your workplace, making sure that the condition, what are the ethics and values that your company is doing? Is your company going beyond helping other people? Discrimination in the workplace, all these sort of things, really focused on that. Other things that are important when it comes to the workplace is how are you interacting with people in your work, right? There's a lot of different colleagues that you may have, and we don't really see all sides to them. We're only seeing them as a work colleague, but that work colleague is also maybe a parent. They also probably have other hobbies. They're probably going through a lot of other challenges, maybe in their personal life. So building compassion and empathy for your work colleague can help a lot. A really interesting analogy is just imagining that they have a thorn in their shoe and you can't see it and it's causing them pain. So sometimes when a work colleague may be treating you in a particular way, just having that empathy and compassion that maybe this person is having a rough day, and then just allowing that person to kind of do their thing. So it's not always, I know it can be quite difficult um, in a sense that you don't want to be walked all over, but having, again, what we spoke about earlier about fighting for justice and rights is part of spirituality, but then also compassion and empathy. So you can make sure that abuse is not happening in the workplace. That is completely in line with spirituality, and then you can also move to that direction as well of having compassion for your co-workers, and just speaking the same way that you speak to the person at the lowest department. Another tip for how to become more spiritual in the workplace I found is, how do you help and mentor people that can't do anything for you, right? We're able to help people that can do a lot for us, whether it's pay us a salary or give us a promotion. But what are you doing for the person who is less qualified? Can you give them time? Can you give them some form of mentorship or advice? Can you stay back a little bit later from work? And so really looking out for new employees, people that you haven't ever, and just seeing how they are. And so taking into consideration that you yourself are going through challenges and difficulties, but also are as well. The other point that I wanted to bring up is spirituality, especially in Australian society, or religion, is seen as something quite, part of my French, but like very stupid, or maybe you're very ignorant if you practice a religion. And a lot of work now do acknowledge that they have a diverse workplace. But yeah, again, taking that time out to talk to your boss or to your co-workers and saying, hey, I might need a bit of time to just pray and just check in with yourself in the day. You have a lunch break, but you should also have a break and food for your, there's food that we put in our body, but food that we should be feeding our soul, and trying to really push for prayer time or reflection, and whatever way that you pray, you pray to any type of God, or the universe, or whoever it is, or just checking in with yourself, just having that time throughout the day, 5 minutes, sitting there with yourself and just redoing your vows with yourself, and just telling yourself that, okay, here I am at work, I'm not feeling too well, please get me through this day, and then just hopefully keep going. Another way that McMindfulness and changing that into a more of a healthy approach is looking at your life and the type of work that you do. And I've acknowledged this at the start that yes, we don't sometimes choose our work, but if you have the privilege to do, making sure you have that balanced approach, and is your work really serving meaning in your life? A lot of people get stressed and depressed because they find that the work is at odds or at contradiction with who they are. So what you can do is, and you shouldn't feel self-centered. What do I really lack when it comes to work? What do I want to do? What I wish I could do? And you have all these choices, and it can be really hard because you become a deer in the headlights. There's so many choices. I want to do this. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a painter. I want to be a sports player. But really narrowing those goals down, realistic, and finding your meaning, your purpose. And this is going to take months. It takes a long time to pick a car, or a long time to pick a house or a partner, or all these sort of things. So even your career should be given the same respect. And that may have short-term financial loss, but at least you'll have that happiness and meaning and purpose. And once that happens, having the empathy and lower ego to be like, well, even if I am in a good place and work and I found my perfect job, that's not going to be great all the time either, right? So it's just constant reflection and constant polishing of the heart, as Rumi says, is that you're never, it's going to go in ebbs. One of my favorite stories for when things are going good is this. I think it's a fable in Iran or in ancient Middle East where a king brought all his wise people around him. He brought all the scholars and all the big people in his kingdom, and he said, make that when I'm sad will make me happy, and when I'm happy will make me sad and reflect. And the people came together and they made this ring, and the ring said this too. And I think that's such a great way of being, is that whatever difficulty you may be facing or whatever success you may have, it will pass. It won't be sustained. So having that realistic understanding that these things come and go, failure comes and goes, but also success comes and goes. And so if these things are happening and you realize that and you really understand that on a spiritual level, and your ego is becoming lower, how do you interact with the people around you? And for me, it just becomes that I am not that great at work, or I can try harder when I fail. Like, you're constantly in those rooms of not letting yourself down, but also striving and having confidence that, if things don't go well, they can go well. And that, as a spiritual person, is constant work. It's constant polishing your heart, constantly lowering your ego. Moving on now to this idea that your work is something that you do, and your whole other life is somewhere else. Spirituality is private, and your work is something that you do. And I think the best way to do that is to really bring those elements together, and that will really, again, it'll transform your life. Just even the way that you eat in the staff room, or the type of food that you take to work, that can change a lot of how you're feeling at work. So the way that you eat, are you going out? And again, I understand that with time and this busy lifestyle, but scheduling your day so that you have healthier food and homemade food. And again, it saves you money, but it's also probably more spiritually fulfilling eating food from home than it is, unhealthy food from outside. And the way that you eat that, a lot of us probably at work just gobble the food down and we just eat it and then we just go. But really sitting there and being thankful that, so gratitude is a really important part of work. After you've completed something, again, whatever religion you believe in, it may be God, or it may be the universe, it may be the beloved, just thanking them for being able to work and being grateful. I found that whenever things aren't going well, that I realize that how grateful I am in whatever position I am. And, many of us, including myself, may come from a South Asian background, and just seeing that the fortune that I have in my position and that other people don't, just really hits you when you're having a tough day at work. The other thing that you can do is the types of, again, this is how you really shape yourself, is, again, how are you waking up, how are you wearing your clothes, how are you sitting, your posture, all those things, the little things that hint. But the spiritual person, the person that learns from the mystics, is there's excellence in all those elements. And those moments of excellence come from really polishing your heart. It's really self and saying, how can I be better, and how can I act like as God is watching me? And that's really kind of what it is about, that you're in this oneness with everyone. And yeah, it's a workplace and there's a computer and a hard drive and carpet and some weird cells and everything, but this is still part of the earth and the universe, and you're there and you're sitting there. So it's trying to make that your form of temple or mosque or whatever it is, that your workplace, and that will bring with it good energy and good vibes. I know my own room, when it's not clean, the amount of negative vibes that come through my room. And I think in your workplace as well, having a clean desk, having things organized, having it smell good, all those things, just really allowing yourself, and people can be like, oh, that person's a very organized person, but no, you're actually attracting good vibes. And they say that the angels kind of are attracted to clean places. So allowing your space to be clean, and how you present yourself, and how you talk and how you work, it all comes into that. And that can help is, and this is starting to become a trend now, is when you have an email and you're constantly checking them and you're constantly replying, and even on the weekends, just create this way that your email, and there's different ways to do it, but it's a kind of a technical thing where you can just say that I'm, kindly not viewing my emails for my own health, for my own self-care, and that I will reply in 2 to 3 days. And so it gives you that buffer zone, and that person will understand, okay, this person's going to reply in 2 to 3 days. So having that email that just sends that prompt message, automated message saying, I'm not going to check my emails at the moment. If you take phone calls or speak on the phone, people know when you're smiling on the phone, and that again helps. Energy just travels, even whether it's via the phone. So when you're talking on the phone, again, spirituality, yes, you're looking after yourself, but you're looking after the other person as well. So even if, and I've seen people have their work voice and they have their normal voice, and that's kind of great, but hopefully one day we can merge our work voice and our normal voice together, where we speak in a way that is kind and smiling, and you can make somebody's day, really. And just going back on the idea of empathy, and I keep bringing it back, but it is a central theme to spirituality, because, you know, as again, Rumi says, ours is not a caravan of despair. You know, come, even if you've broken your vows 1,000 times. So there was an example that I had, which was I was at Caulfield Station, which is a local train station here in Melbourne, and I was going through the ticket aisles and where people go through the to the platform, and I accidentally had walked in front of somebody who looked, you know, who was in a suit and was coming back from work. It was around 5 p.m. and I bumped into him, and, you know, he started swearing and was really frustrated and angry. He walked off, and 2 minutes later, I feel a tap on my shoulder, and he comes back to me and he says, "Hey, sorry about my reaction before. I've had a really tough day at work." And that was probably one of the nicest things anybody's ever said, because it was an acknowledgement that he was under stress and felt really not the same person that he is normally, and he acknowledged that, and I think that was great. And I think with anger and sadness and stress from work, almost be like a duck. You know, if you see a duck at a park, the duck does get angry. The duck does chase after another duck, but it doesn't hold on to these grudges and hold on to, oh, this person did this to me and this duck did this, that to me. No, the duck just gets angry and then lets it go. And if you can do that with work and at home, or with work colleagues, you know, you see a lot of politics at the workplace, backbiting and people talking about one another. But if you can allow the anger and frustration that you have in that moment, maybe somebody's not on a deadline, maybe somebody hasn't done the work that you asked them to do, maybe somebody's being, you know, even bossy or whatever, just allowing that you have, yes, let it come out particular ways, but then not holding on to that and just letting it go. A lot of conflict happens in our workplaces with people, you know, because of the anger and the frustration that they have, and it spreads, and that energy spreads, and those bad vibes spread. So again, yeah, be like a duck at the workplace. See, get frustrated, get angry. Your boss is giving you a lot of work to do, but then let that go, and you can use that to help yourself. So whenever you get angry, just think about the duck analogy, that this is going to come, but it's going to go. I also wanted to touch constantly as well. Part of spirituality is that you really never have the answer. You know, you're constantly meeting at the doorstep of God. You're constantly redoing that relationship. You know, every time you're meeting is a new meeting with your higher power. Similarly with work, you have to constantly learn. You never have complete and utter wisdom. The most person is the person who knows that they don't have wisdom. Is that this thing that you are good at in work? How do you improve? How do you become better? And how do you take on criticism? These are all things that, again, whether you do it through philosophy or reading of books or asking advice or whatever it is, allowing yourself to be humble enough to say that I need to learn new ways and new techniques. Even if you have mastered what you're doing, learning and cultivating new learning experiences. And that is part of being a spiritual person, is never having an ego that's too high, never having an ego that says that I am the best and I can achieve everything. It's something that we spiritual people never do. It's not that we lack confidence. You need to have confidence in the workplace, and you need to believe in yourself. A spiritual person believes in dreaming, and that they can achieve anything with God's help and or the beloved's help. But also having that underlying humility and service. So, what are you serving to people? A lot of these companies that we have today and workplaces that we have today, they lack the visibility of seeing how you're impacting, right? Because we live in this globalized economy and world, and we're just cogs in the machine, and we don't really see the impact that our service or our work has on another person. So trying to see and ask questions about how your service happens, or learning more about your workplace and what you actually do. And then, again, being easy on yourself and compassionate on yourself. The work that you may do, yes, you may not be able to serve a big charity or do some community work, but how are you treating your family? How are you serving your family? And that is another thing that we shouldn't undermine as spiritual people, is the importance and the love should come back a lot to how you are with your family. There's a really funny, I guess, analogy is you have a lot of these really wealthy parents who say that I'm doing this for my children, and then the children, you see the child, and the child is depressed because they're unable to connect with their parents. So what are they doing? They're making money and all this sort of stuff, but for their children, but not really with their children, and not working to make the lives better for their children on an emotional or mental or spiritual level. So if you are able to, don't be too harsh on yourself if you're not able to do extracurricular service activities or find meaning in your work. Your meaning could be in how you treat your family, the work and the wages and the bills that you pay. That is enough. And how you are at home, and how you with your children and your friends and extended family. So really bringing that element of work, the reward of work, back to the home is a form of service. And in that, you can find a lot of greatness. I also want to acknowledge that the idea of work is a meter of success in our society. People talk about work. The first thing you do when you introduce somebody, they're like, "Oh, what do you do? I'm this, I'm that," and this sort of stuff. And I think, again, as spiritual people, it's important to be quiet achievers. It's important to say, "Yes, I do this," but try to start introducing yourself without the work and career thing. Let people just see you for who you are, right? And that also extends to the fact that there's a lot of people who don't work, who are doing amazing stuff, whether that's people who are working at as a mother or a father at home, and people who only do different types of work, volunteer work or whatever. So again, let's not value the idea of a career on that level, that it undermines a lot of people who don't do much, or people who have chosen a job out of a particular reason, or this sort of stuff. So really being humble and a quiet achiever about, yes, I do this stuff, but it doesn't define me, and I also am a human being, and I'm like this. And yeah, let's not talk to people too much about what type of work you do. and not feel like we're better than anybody because we do this type of work. Another way that I feel we lack spirituality in the current workplace is, how is your money, especially, being used? And I know, like, people have their own way of charity and this sort of stuff, but again, that is another great way of helping people, is through charity, right? Um, how many of us know what the local orphanage is? If you look at a lot of the religious books, they talk about the orphanage, but how much of us know where the local orphanage is? How much of us, again, through our work and through our companies, are bringing up housing prices in our areas, but what are the people that are being left behind? Through our work practices, what does our company do to a less developing country, and what are the natural resources that are going? All these things, like, where is our money going? How can we use it better? Making those ethical decisions, environmentally friendly decisions, are part of our spirituality. Acknowledging that sort of stuff is a form of healing, because when you do things like that, then you're able to do things more from the soul and more naturally. So I think, all in all, it's a very important thing that, if you can cultivate. But again, it's a way of life that you're constantly trying to work on. You will never have it all figured out. And Sunday nights become a place for us, mostly, where we get depressed and we have a reevaluation of life. And there's so many choices out there, and what do I do? How is it possible? And can I leave my work? Is it hard, or is it possible? There's too many choices. All these factors are involved, and it's really hard. And just acknowledging that it is difficult, but then allowing your soul and your vibes to kind of be okay with the current way of, but not being too passive, right? So it's all those things of, like, yes, you are compassionate and you are spiritual and you believe in oneness, and that whatever God or whatever the universe has for you, that is perfect and that is fine, and that is the way life will be, and we are okay with that. But at the same time, remembering injustice, human rights, ethics, values, classism, right? That's another huge thing, that through work we have built this idea of higher class and lower class and social norms. Like, with spiritual enlightenment, the person who drives a rubbish truck driver could have the most beautiful, enlightened soul and meaning and character, compared to somebody who owns, a multi-billion-dollar company. And so we should value those things, of character and deeds and good behavior, rather than status and money. And so in our current society, we, with the lack of spirituality, unfortunately, value those things, right? Status and achievements. But as a spiritual person, you look at the inside. There's a really interesting story around these mystics who were walking past the grave, and they walked past a man, and the man died quite old. Like, on his graveyard tombstone, it said that he was, something like 120 years old. And the mystic said to one of the older teachers, "Oh, look at this! We're passing an old man." And he said, "No, we're passing a very young man." And the mystic said, "Well, what do you mean, young man? It's an old man that died." And he said, "No, he may have been an old man in age, but he died young in the terms of spirituality. Like, he didn't have the wisdom and the age and that sort of stuff." And so spiritual people, you can be, 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, but if you haven't balanced out your spiritual life for a child. So for the spiritual person, we don't look at status, we don't look at money, we don't look at things that you can achieve or whatever. It's about going for your dreams and providing service to people and helping others on the way. And work, if you're unable to do that in your work, trying to do that in other ways. The way that currently, with the unfortunate situation of COVID, is that there's hybrid models coming about, and with these hybrid models, we may have time to do other things. So if you work as an engineer or you work as a doctor or an accountant, you may be able to hopefully one day have a type of lifestyle where you're working 4 days a week, and then for the other 2 days, you do something that you're really passionate about and love. So really finding other things besides just that one career focus, again, can be immense for your soul. And again, it's very difficult, but again, pushing for policy, pushing for social and economic change on that level, that maybe a 4-day week is much better. Maybe hybrid model, maybe allowing for that self-care and value is good, right? And just lastly as well, this idea of, I brought up the term McMindfulness and work and different career techniques and stuff. Whatever you're doing, we're all trying, and it's a very interesting place that we live on, which is Earth, and we don't all have it figured out. True beauty in spirituality is that it is an anchor for you, and so you look at everything in the world, celebrities, they can let you down. Your football team, my team's Essendon, it lets me down. It's not won a grand final in years. You look at the weather, even the seasons come and go, the rains, the sun, the plants will come and go, our parents will come and go. So nothing is really constant. Even the sun is burning away slowly. In millions and millions of years, the sun will cease to exist. So what is constant life? What is the anchor? And for me, it's a higher power. For me, it is, whatever you call it. Some people have different names for the beloved, the higher power, the beyond this world. But that is what's articulated, from what I understand from religions, is it is the only constant. Everything else goes up and down and flows and comes and goes, but that is one constant. And I think seeking refuge in that, whatever way you do it, will really help you navigate this difficult thing called life and this difficult thing called work. So hopefully you took some wisdom and knowledge away from it. Again, remember that work is not easy, and you're constantly learning, and the same with spirituality. So hopefully you enjoyed this discussion. I was Malik. This was a Chai Chat and Community. Join us for the next episodes that we have on this beautiful platform, where we talk about very different social issues and community issues. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Love to hear from you, and thank you so much. Peace.